Hello, ladies. I am so honored that you came to listen to me today while you work, and I hope you can get something accomplished in your home. And this is Homemakers Radio. Welcome. And if you would like to leave a comment, please go to the link that I have provided and look at the site and enjoy the other women that are there. I created this because sometimes homemaking is isolating. And in the olden days, I observed my mother and other people's mothers listening to the radio while they washed dishes, and it seemed to pace them and get them through, and they had their favorite songs and little radio programs, and they could look out their kitchen window while they're washing dishes and look at their little garden that was just outside that window. And I thought it'd be nice to have a radio to listen to for homemakers. And I do have my favorite programs. I love to watch Princess Home, but I have to stop and look and take my time viewing it. And I'd like to know if you're getting anything done while you listen to this. I have my favorite things to listen to. I listen to movies, but I don't watch them, and I can get through half of one and get my kitchen done. So today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about homemaking and how it can be a very daunting experience if you're not used to it. Now, many people find themselves home now and aren't going to go back. They're going to stay home, and they're finding that it is quite a job, and it is a serious job if you really are serious about life. If you want to succeed and be successful in the home, you will also want to know that a woman's job is to guide and guard her home, and that's scriptural. That's from the Bible too. She's supposed to guard and guide her home, and I've told you before about how she has to have a big say in the life of her children and her husband, and it's not just a servant's job or a chore. She has a big say in it, and she will have a lot to do with their real estate and their banking and everything else, and she's often the one that has to do a lot of that while her husband works. And in America, in the U.S. especially, and well, in the farming areas where I live, the women generally stay home because it is just not profitable to go to work such a long distance, and then the farm needs to be looked after, and often the husband has another job such as lumber, fishing, or working in the sawmills, or some other job. And then the farms have to be looked after, and the distances are too great for both of them to be working. Plus, women realize that they are going to have to stay and look after the property, and so it's nice to have something to listen to, but you're going to be doing it alone, and that might not be something you're used to if you're used to going out to work, because you will not have a group. You will not have group approval. You end up learning to do things so that you will approve of it yourself and be pleased with it. So you always try to do your best. So you have to be a guard and guide of the home. Now, we're going through a very difficult time in the world and politically, and it is very interesting. I ran across a poem the other day that I'll try to leave for you here. I can't read it because I didn't actually find the book. I'm going through my books, and they're all in a big jumble right now. But this was by Edgar A. Guest, and it was called Leave It at the Door. And it was about a man. He wrote poems in the 1940s, shortly after a war, and he knew that the Americans, he was British, but he had lived in America, and he knew that the Americans would need poetry and things that lifted them up. He wasn't a gloom and doomer. All of his poems were right up there encouraging people. And he had a poem written to men called Leave It at the Door. And it was about all the things that happened in the world while he's out in the world earning a living. And some of it is not so nice, the way men undercut each other, the way businesses act, the way there's just the tragedies and different things. And he urged them, when you come near that beautiful home, that door where this sacred place of your family is, you leave all that stuff at the door, and you don't even be tempted to discuss it in the home. And so in guarding and guiding the home, we try to lift up the troops. We try to keep people on an equal level of emotion, and that is really difficult sometimes. But we start out, if you start out by getting dressed up, This is something that you can do. It's something that you can control. Okay, you can't control what your grown children do and where they go and the choices they make with their careers and just the uncertainty of the politics in the world, and maybe the state you're living in is going through some kind of strange upheaval, and you can't control all that, and it is very discouraging. But you can get dressed and you can get dressed up and you can look your best. You can control that. So that is something you can do. And of course, the second thing that you can do is, and it will have a big bearing on your emotional state while you work through your home. And the other thing is that no matter what the situation is, you can't live in squalor. You have to keep your house. You have to be a keeper of the house. And a keeper of the house, when you really explore this, the meaning of this biblically, it's like a member of an army. You have to be alert on. You got to have eyes in the back of your head almost. And so cleaning your house and taking care of it is something else that you can, for the most part, control. Of course, there are other people around you, and there are people in the family, and you can't always keep up with it. But you have a greater control over it, and no one else outside of your home can control that, but you can. So those are two things that you can have dominion over: your appearance and your home. You can have, for the most part. I know it doesn't always work out the way you want, but for the most part, nobody else can come in and tell you what to do with those two things. And it's the same with raising and teaching your children. That's your job. And so you've got that now. You can teach them. And I'm homeschooling you right now. I've been a preacher's wife for almost 50 years too, and I can give you some little stories about church experiences. And this is just based on my experience and my opinion. Nobody has to follow it. And I'm doing it under my freedom of speech, and hopefully you can benefit from it. But basically, it's just to keep you company while you work. I'm just talking. So I have recently read something that people kept telling me to read this little book. It's just a little book, and it cost about $2.95. It was called The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and I thought, why in the world would I want to read that book? And what does it have to do with home living and homemaking? But last night, for some reason, I was sleepless. I hadn't taken my exercises yesterday, so I don't sleep as well when I don't. And instead of getting up and taking my exercises, I decided to read that book. And I did connect it quite a bit to the home and to the home living. And I thought I would just pass off some of the things that I learned, and one of them was, and I thought this could be applicable to the home. One of them was that this general apparently advised was, when you know where your destination for your army is, where you know how far they have to go, don't make them hurry and go further and use up all their energy to get ahead, to get there a day ahead or something, because they will be defeated when they get there, because they won't be fresh troops. They'll be tired. And you know, when you look at this for the home, if you'll start out with a list, I always have this yellow list, just simple things that you have to do. You know you have to. I always advise the things that involve health and sanitation. Do that first. Your kitchen, get that cleaned up and sanitized. Get your refrigerator clean. Get your bathroom, make sure your bathroom clean and your laundry's done. And then after that, list some other things that need to be done, clearing up the clutter, and also adding beauty touches of beauty, beautiful things, little touches. And some people have wondered, well, they'll look in the background of my videos and say, well, I really wish I had all that stuff, but a lot of it I just made out of fabric and stuffing, or I can even, I could take a paper bag and I could make a bouquet of roses out of it if I really wanted to. So you can have things that you long for that are pretty in your home without, going to much fuss or trouble. And I always tend to avoid the knickknacks and things that will break. So I enjoy just putting my own stuff, a new pillow, something that I make to make it pretty. So, and then a couple of other things that I read in that book that I found interesting was when an enemy comes and their intention is to demoralize you, and that's the first thing that an enemy will do. Now, an enemy, you might think, well, I don't have any enemies. An enemy is anything that is defeating, and it could be thoughts, it could be suggestions, it could be ideas, it could be things that you've run into that you can't seem to overcome. It could be your own flaws, and so one of the things that it said was to keep the enemy in perspective, and that one of the things was who is the best, who has the best sovereign. In other words, who has the best God. And don't take the suggestions that you hear coming at you all the time or the criticism. Think about who has the best Savior, and that solves a lot too. Start comparing. Wait a minute, what are these people telling me? Where are they coming from? What do they believe? And how can what they say be true? And I feel like homemakers get a lot of negative, and maybe you don't, but you say, nobody ever says anything to me. That's great. But sometimes people do run into a situation where the homemaker's just trying to, be the nice homemaker, keep house, homeschool her kids, look after everything, do her church work, and somebody comes along and says something quite cruel to her about how useless she is. And, I noticed since I left the world and I've been staying home since July and not really venturing outside of the property, that I get excited about things that I remember people making fun of, mocking ladies that wanted to stay home back, when this whole thing of surge of getting women outside the home began back in the 60s. I heard a woman say how excited she was to bake something, and the smell and how it filled the house, and just how it just made her so glad that day. And someone made a cruel remark to her about how, is that all you women at home are concerned about? What about, greatness in the world? What about world problems? And one of the things that has harmed us, I think, is trying to get outside of this and world problems. They creep into the home sometimes, and they can demoralize you and defeat you. And in a way, that's an enemy. But the home has to be guarded. And if you guard something, you don't let anything in that's foreign. You don't let anything in that's ruinous. And so I just wanted to mention that to you, that some of these things in that book, The Art of War, were quite valuable for the home and for preserving the home. And it talked about how to make your army love you as a leader, so that they would walk through the rain without an umbrella for you. That's my own paraphrase, but they would do anything for you. They would walk through the rain for you. They would be uncomfortable for you if they had to. They would suffer for you. And how good that is to know, because if you are a loving leader and a homemaker too, they are going to notice your dedication and your love for them, and they'll do anything for you the other way too. Now, today I wanted to talk a little bit about the third part is about people and about getting along with people, and about lately I've been talking about things Christian women need to be careful about saying, because we want to lift people up and not send them their mood plummeting. And one of the things that came up with that is this remark that people make, and it's a real old habit. I mean, I can remember hearing this back in the day, when I was in the 1960s, when I was 16. I remembered hearing this. Is if you had a problem, or maybe your home there was a flood or something and part of your home got destroyed, or if your father lost his job, or just any kind of thing that happened, somebody would make the cruel remark, well, I'm glad I'm not in your family. And they didn't realize, I don't think, that is very unsympathetic, and it's a put down. And so I always like to include working with people, because that is part of being a homemaker. Is you are going to be with people in your home, and maybe people that aren't in your family that aren't quite on board with you will make remarks. And let's say even if you have a visitor and from another town, a friend comes over and they see something in your house that isn't quite up to standard or something, and they'll say, well, I'm glad I don't live here. What that is, and they may not realize it, is it's a subtle, maybe not so subtle, put down of the person who's living there. It's saying, this is really a crummy, rotten place, and you are really dumb to live here. I'm glad I'm not. Or if you've had, maybe you're not doing too well, and someone says, well, I'm glad I'm not you. That is really a rude remark. Teach your children not to say that. We shouldn't be thinking in those terms anyway. I can look at the situation in a communist country far away from here, but I never say, well, I'm glad I don't live there. I'm thinking, I hope that those people can be free. I hope that we can help them. I hope that, we have to always give hope. And this is what this art of war was all about. You have to. Your army has to know that you are hopeful, that you always give a hopeful explanation. And one of the mistakes that people at home often make is saying, well, things are just bad, they always will be bad, they always were bad. What an awful atmosphere to raise children in. You cannot do that and expect your children to lift you up later. See, this is the thing. After you've raised your children, and by the way, I'm hoping to homeschool you through this, and then my light is fading really bad because I got started here early this morning, and it was just one thing after another that needed to be done, and people that I needed to talk to, and now my light is going. But one of the mistakes that women at home make is to be down on everything. And it's like I was telling in the last time, you'd be talking to someone and you have such hopes for something that you're doing, and they'll say, yeah, but that doesn't always work. They feel obligated to say that. They think they're just making conversation, and it keeps them happy to say something like that, but they don't realize that it's a put down. And so Christian women at home need to be very careful what they say, so that when you're in close quarters and when you're with a family, you've got to build each other up, and you have to make sure. And at the end of the day, gather your family around you and say, how have we improved today? Who did we build up? What did we say that was encouraging? And what did you learn today? And you might even mention, one of the children has got a new tooth coming in. Let's congratulate him. Another child has learned to tie his shoes. Oh, do people tie their shoes anymore? I guess that's from the olden days, right? But just these little things. And maybe someone is trying to improve their speech. Children often have a hard time pronouncing some things, and will say he's learned to say his T's or something like that. And you gather your people around you, and even when you're older, you can do this and say, this is what we've done today. This is what we've accomplished. And even if all they have done is been kind, that is really important too. Now I'm going to read you out of my book, Just Breathing the Air, the story of Joel and Lillian McGoy. And my mother was Canadian, my father was from Texas, and they went to Alaska and they homesteaded. And the light is so bad that I won't be able to show you very much. But here's what my mother said. When I say so easily that Joe built a small cabin, I must tell you how easy it really was. In the winter, it wasn't too difficult to drive through a bush road that a homesteader had built if the snow wasn't too high. But in the summer, it was impossible. Our method was to go as fast as we could, hoping the vehicle would skip over the holes and puddles and avoid the trees. If we did get stuck, spruce branches came to our aid. We put them in front of the wheels and rocked the car until the wheels got traction. However, that was no guarantee, and by the time we got to Kenai Road, half a day had passed. Most people preferred to leave their car at the end of the road and walk down the home road. I remember so many times they'd bundle us all up and we'd have great hopes because, we were pretty isolated out there, and it was such a great thing to go to church in town or just go to town for shopping, and we looked forward to it so much. And half a day would go by trying to get that car out of its stuck position, and then Mother would just give up, and we'd all walk back home crying, It was winter, so Joe was able to leave the Willys Jeep at Ed Hendrick's place, then haul the materials for building the cabin on the toboggan. Wearing snowshoes, they pulled the toboggan behind them. And so that's all I can read now, because I've lost my light, and I'm so sorry about that. I didn't prepare, but people have asked me about my lighting. Well, my lighting is just sitting in front of a window. I don't go to any trouble. I don't have special lamps. But this is to listen to anyway, and I've only spoken to you for 20 minutes, and you don't need to see anything here. But I'm trying to read my notes to see if I can tell you anything else that you might. Okay, so here are two things that someone told me recently when we were talking. I was discussing this attitude that people have, that anything that happens is, well, you deserved it, or I'm glad it's not you, and this all happened because because there's something flawed about you, and in circumstances, especially the political circumstances. But there are some people that subtly blame God, and they will say, well, that must be God's punishment on you. That must be God's will. Well, one lady brought out in one of the discussions we were having that in both Jerusalem and in Sodom and Gomorrah, God gave his people a chance to get out. So there's much evidence in the destruction of Jerusalem, that many people did leave and did escape, and Jesus told them to escape. And so there is always a way of escape for Christians. And one of the things we have to be careful is not to let our minds be pulled down by bad news, and we have to always be optimistic and trust in the Lord. And I hope you got a few things done. It's only been 22 minutes, but I hope you got a few things done, and I'll see you next time. Bye.